Giri Tongda Jiji Yungwanda Medini Vijinda Chawat Timba Luji Mizu Tsuju Ne Chaji Deja Tanda Dele Yo Sanje Peje Shuji Meto Tama Riru Lunji Nide Jembo Ande Sanje Jento Mete Buwa Rokuyananda Jinha Shebur Sho Idam Guru Re Mandala Kone Ataya Me Sanje Chela Soje Chonamon Sancho Bardo Dane Shabsun Age Jehe Jepe Sonam Dola Pensha Sanje Rubar So Sanje Chela Soje Chonamon Sancho Bardo Dane Shabsun Tage Juju Jibe Sonam Jin Rola Pensha Sanje Rubar So Sanje Chela Soje Chonam Sancho Bardo Dane Shabsun Tage Juju Jibe Sonam Rola Pensha Sanje Rubar So Holas Majena Kitata Nyembe Singi Tangi Tondo Tojalana me Bayanda Bajobi Sanji Kumbarum Bujkin Tobra Shagwe, the Tobra Shavi Chedo, and be Churum Bujasin and Becolon Sanji Simchi, say Simpe one is Sembric.
Let us cultivate the altruistic motivation that seeks complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating all kind mother sentient beings. With that kind of altruistic motivation, or what we call bodhicitta motivation, that we should all participate in this teaching.
Lower to Sinja Tamji, Dungi Tamji the J, Bella Tamji the Dangita, never some of the viewers.
When we look at all the six types of sentient beings in samsara, down to the smallest insects, what we see is this, that all of us do not wish for any kind of pain and suffering, but we are all seeking genuine happiness. So in those respects, we and all other sentient beings are just the same. So if we want to be free from suffering for good, then what we must do is work for nirvana or complete liberation from samsara. So what do we exactly mean by tarpa, which is the Tibetan term or translation of nirvana or nibbana? What is it? Liberation. Liberation is a stage in which we are free of suffering and its causes for good, but we experience everlasting peace and happiness. Such a state is to be understood or to be recognized as nirvana or liberation.
Nothing about the Hungers. Karasana, Dungi Tamjita, Chair, only Tetway Tang about the Yorsta, the Sound Tongers, understand.
I think it's very important for us to consider the possibilities for attaining such a state. In other words, if we ask the question to ourselves, is it possible for anybody to attain such a state of freedom, such a state where we are free of all suffering, but we experience lasting peace and happiness. Now the answer is yes, it is very possible.
That the in human Shabanta, Ali Tungi, Tombo Dungiti, Marancholo, Nyon Yimbi, Dungiti, Dungi Yimbak, that much of a shagoris.
Of course, we need to first, contemplate the situation in which we find ourselves in. So we are in a state where we encounter all kinds of pains and suffering. We have to recognize the situation we find ourselves in. This is almost like a step number one.
That day, that is the Dungi Imba Sang, Machine Chan Yungu Maris. So Yon is a Dungi, but Dungi Hakogurvas, the Sang of the West.
Now, when I say that, maybe anybody here thinks that, well, how come we don't understand what suffering is? Come on, give us a break. When I go through painful experience, I know it's a suffering. So what are we really talking about? I mean, that we have to recognize suffering as suffering.
Yeah. That dunge manja sum yoris.
But let me tell you a little bit more about the situation in which we find ourselves in. When we talk about suffering, suffering is not just one kind. As a matter of fact, broadly speaking, if you will, there are three different types or categories of suffering.
That tambo dele, that dukhut karseta, mo mhead, kares nata, and the tambo de, and there is Chaban Dorjee Donghe there is Chaban Dorjee Donghe Siate, and a call nail shed sarne. Sheva some journey, Donghe Tita, you ever chagaris.
So there are three types of suffering. There is what we call extensive or pervasive suffering, literally translating it. Pervasive in the sense that, as soon as, we find ourselves in samsara or single existence, it doesn't matter which part of samsara we're in, we do experience certain level of suffering. And this is the kind of suffering that we have not yet realized, based upon our own experiences. It's the kind of suffering that pervades the whole existence of samsara. And this is, as a matter of fact, the subtle form of suffering. And then maybe a level below that, if you will, there's another level of suffering, which is called suffering of change. Again, most of us really don't realize this is a form of suffering.
Now, what
that means, is that all kinds of things we consider as happiness in samsara or pleasurables, as a matter of fact, these are, a form of suffering. So they are part of what we call suffering of change.
Yeah.
So as a matter of fact, when we analyze the different misconceptions that we have within ourselves, one of the big, what we call misconceptions or distorted perceptions, the Tibetan term is loshe, distorted perception or understanding that we have, is to regard that which is, as a matter of fact, suffering as something pleasurable. So this is what is happening with us, that even though there's what we call suffering of change, but we don't recognize it as a form of suffering. Rather, we see it mostly as something pleasurable, something to acquire, something we would like to have. So this kind of understanding or this kind of conception that we have inside us is, as a matter of fact, a distorted conception.
I think So what's
the bottom line here? If you say, how do we say that all the pleasures we experience in samsara are a form of suffering, it's a suffering of change? What do we mean? What's the bottom line here, if you ask? The bottom line here is that to whatever extent we experience such pleasures, we are never satisfied. It's like we never feel enough, and at the end we're just disappointed. All these pleasures, at the end lead us to disappointment. Lokshe, distorted perception or conception, what it does is it sees or misperceives a reality that is untrue as being true, or that which is not truth as being truth. You see, that's how we get confused, because we believe that that is the state of being, or maybe that is the reality. But in actuality, we have gone wrong with that. That's not how things are, And that's why when we have such conceptions or perceptions within us with regard to phenomena, such conceptions or perceptions are considered as distorted perceptions. Now, if we hold the notion that, I do know what pain is, what suffering is, and now that is basically because of our experience of what we call the manifest form of suffering. You see, it's often translated as suffering of misery or suffering of suffering. I don't know how much sense it conveys in English. But at least that's the term we threw around. But what it really means is it's just the kind of suffering right under our nose. When we bump into it, we know that it is painful. You see, so based on that experience, we feel like, I know what problem is. What suffering is. So we find plenty of examples of the suffering that we do know, very well. And it's like, if we eat the kind of food that we cannot digest, due to indigestion, now we got a problem. There is a stomach problem or indigestion problem. So we know it is a painful. Or that if it's too hot, we can't tolerate it. If it's too cold, we suffer. So these kind of pain and suffering that we go through are what we call manifest forms of suffering. And these are presented as suffering of misery or suffering of suffering, meaning that in addition to the pervasive suffering which exists across the samsara, that we experience these manifest forms of suffering. So now when we say that we need to be free from suffering, what we really have to understand, consider that we want to be free from all those three levels of types or forms of suffering.
That thing is in China,
so if we are to be free from all different three types of suffering, but how can we do that? Of course, now we have to investigate the source of suffering. Where do they come from? Theoretically speaking, any kind of suffering does not arise without its causes and conditions. Okay, that is a theoretical fact and a principle. It's just impossible for any form of suffering to arise without any causes and conditions. That being the case, now we need to investigate what are the causes and conditions of suffering. So now to put this in the framework of the Four Noble Truths, I just spoke a little bit about the truth of suffering or true suffering. Okay. Now, once we realize it, if we want to be free from it, then we say, how can I be free from it? Means we have to find the source of, suffering, which is basically the second truth, the true cause of suffering. No. So it is called Kunjung. Literally, Tibetan term Kunjung means it's a source from which all suffering arises. You see, and so that's the true cause of suffering. So here, as we investigate what is true cause of suffering, we should understand again there are two, causes here. One is what we call delusions or deluded states of mind, kleshya in Sanskrit, and other is the contaminated karma, contaminated karmic actions. These are the two, causes of our suffering. And of those two causes of suffering, of course, delusions are the, what we call the primary causes, because grounded in delusions, if you will, we accumulate contaminated karmic actions. So contaminated karmic actions as if they arise out of or from deluded states of mind. So in terms of karma as cause of suffering, if you will, or no, not cause of suffering, it's karma as causes, we can think of different types of karma. Maybe often we can talk about positive karma or wholesome karma and negative karma or unwholesome karma. Yes. So by definition of contaminated karmic actions, by using that specific term, what we mean is it does not matter whether the karma we create and accumulate is positive or negative. Such karmas bring their results or outcomes in samsara. That's why such karmas are called contaminated karmic actions. We may do something good, positive karma, but because it is contaminated karma, that it brings its good results in samsara. So it's really important for us to investigate this, the nature of karmas, and basically it's because of different types of karma, we have different types of beings in samsara. As earlier I mentioned, there are 6 types of beings or migrators in samsara. So when we look at the 6 types of sentient beings in samsara, there are 3 in what we call, relatively speaking, in a state of happy migration, if you will, good rebirths. And these are the celestial beings or the divine beings, devas and devis, and what we call the human beings, us, and demigods or demi-divine beings. Make a new word there. So these are the 3 types of beings. Are the results of, if you will, positive contaminated karmic actions. Now, because of negative karmic actions that we accumulate, then we see 3 other types of beings in a bad migration. And these are the hell beings, hungry ghosts, and lesser kind of animals. So I just kind of broadly laid out, there are positive karmic actions we accumulate which lead to positive rebirths. There are negative karmic actions we accumulate which lead to negative rebirths. But where do these karmas come from? As I said earlier, these karmas are, in many ways, are grounded in the delusions that we have.
So that any that new moment that pa jebra segina ta mambo nyomo jeti to tamba segutat tini your hesta.
So now you ask about delusions, of course. If we do the most extensive classification of delusions, then as we often throw the term around, there are 84,000, literally, you can trust my math here. 84,000, forms of delusions each of us has got. That's a lot.
Yina that Manas Shebatel Mandra Jekpena the was the jacket that the Mutsanyu took that the was.
And then if we try to kind of, narrow down the list, to the really primary delusions, then often we talk about 6 primary delusions, like the 3 poisons or the 3, ignorance, attachment, anger, then you add jealousy and pride and, things like that. So we can talk about primary delusions.
And that you must summon yourself, Zawatan, you must in that Zawe, you must.
So, if we kind of split the delusions into different dimensions, if you will, aspects, then there are really many, 84,000 as I said, that's too many. But then if we really look down at the bottom line, what is there at the very root, bottom? Is there any particular kind of delusion that gives rise to all of this? Yes, there are some root delusions.
The car is that Danzi Maripa the 2 years. Danzi Maripa the Yomo Tanjits our.
So we should not and need not be bogged down by the number of delusions. It's a huge number, as if like, okay, now when can I ever be free then, But if we really look down at the root, there is what we call grasping at self. That is ignorance. See, that is the root delusion from which arises all other, delusions. So if we can knock out the root delusion, that's how we get free.
Tan those a kanga dosinta, so any didu karishoma in the summer late and shomata. Late and any Yum but shomata, Yum but an aniata, Yum with Sawate, any Timuli, shomata, about the Sound Congress.
So it's important for each of us to reflect on these matters in our everyday life, that as we experience both good and bad things in our life, we should know these are related to our good and bad karmas. We are responsible for our good and bad karmas, and due to our own karmic actions, we go through different experiences. Some are good, some are bad. But then these are all related with the delusions that we have inside us. And ultimately, all of these experiences are related to our ignorant grasping at self.
That Danzi Maripa in Yomon Tanji Zawa Sonsani, Danzi Marita Maba Zevina, that Yomon Samolata, on a Maba Zev the Chayama, that Zoingers Kanji.
So recognizing that basic ignorance, fundamental, grasping at self as the root delusion from which arises all other forms of delusion and then all other suffering, if we can find a way, an antidote to counteract that particular grasping, and we can knock out that grasping, that's the way to be free from suffering for good.
And then you are again Samalo and Ranjili Timu the Maba sent the Jombaina, Ranjili Yomon Samata,
Great Indian master Aryadeva says in his 400 stanzas on the middle path called Chetuk Shedak, as Geshe quoted a line, it's the one line that says, if you destroy ignorance, you will destroy it all. Now what do we mean by that? If we destroy that fundamental ignorance inside us, we will destroy all other forms of delusion.
That day pain the bay Jana de was better, and Hindo Gil and Yaga don't come with the Yabachi the Yana. Hindo goes out the Govina, Yaga in the Jagumar, goes out the Govin the us.
I think we find a simple example to illustrate the same point, right? If there could be a huge, like a tree, which has thousands of branches and all of that, And if we have to clear up this tree, if we start like cutting down every branch, that may take a long time, But instead we find a way to uproot the tree, just take the tree from the very root, then why bother even to cut every limb and every branch and, of the trees? There's no need.
That sounds like that is the Naranzo Rangjili Temu Dinzi Maribata Mevasa Tatakishagores, just to Shabala, the Hakogularis.
So my important message here is that all of us need to find a way to counteract grasping at self that exists within each of us. That is so important, and this is the crux of the matter, that we have to find, we have to understand what that grasping is and find an antidote to apply to it.
Man, those Davina, Yomotanji Zawa, the mood map of Zervin Jombina, and a Yomotanji Jombi. Yomotanji Jombina, and a Kunjun, the lady goes in Yomi Kunjunika John. The Jombina, and a Ranga, and a pay Koenel Sheva Lango Amaris, and a Dunga Yonko Amaris, and a Tabe Combat Togres.
Now, if I'm, I will rationalize the whole thing that I just explained to you. It's like we have too many delusions. And how can we get rid of them? Well, go to the very bottom, of the pile, so to speak. What is there? There is this grasping at self. So if we can find a way to, uproot that grasping at self, then that's as good as uprooting all other delusions from within our mind. So when delusions are no more in our mind, what does that mean now? What that means is that we are free of contaminated karmic actions and delusions. Okay, so now what does that mean? Now what that means is that we no more have to be reborn under the influence in samsara. That means no more headaches in samsara. You see, no more suffering. Okay. And so that's the picture we need to see, how all these things make sense. We have to put a perspective on the things I just explained, that to be free from suffering, we have to be free from delusions. To be free from delusions, we have to be free from grasping at self. If we are free from grasping at self, we are free from delusions, we are free from suffering, therefore we are free from samsara.
That thing, Nebado, Ram Korean Shell, Tomamepani, when those in the Yanian to Yonga Titan. Ane, Tagana Yungi, Padme, Junjim, and Yonga at Samal Karisna, Rang Julia, Pidanzi Maribatil, Tubate Hakovshe.
So again, just to emphasize the bottom line, all of us need to consider this very seriously, that we have been in samsara for so long. We said from beginningless time. There was no beginning to our, life in samsara. But how come we have been so long in samsara? Nobody to be blamed upon, but it's basically our own grasping at self that is inside us. Okay, that is the root, cause of our problems.
Ranjili Yomonta Majana, Laman Nubachembota, Sanji, that's Sanji Nubache, San Yamarte, Sanji Katan, Ranjili Yomumba, Rang Mebat Mazuna, Sanji and Netoyamas.
So, we cannot kind of look for the sort of a magical external help from a highly enlightened guru or a living Buddha of some kind, as if they can do the trick in magic, and then the grasping at self is kind of blasted out of our system, and then we are free. Nothing works like that. Everything depends upon our individual determination and efforts. Buddha cannot give us any magic blessing, says, okay, you don't need to do the work and I'll do it for you, and so just by my grace, you will be free. Now, there's no such thing, you see. The only Buddha could do is, teach us, and we need to implement the teachings ourselves, and we have to do the hard work ourselves and liberate ourselves, from the state of suffering. No. And Buddha made it very clear, he never confused us. He said, I show you the nature of truth, and you just experience it, discover it by yourself, and then you will be free.
Bigba Jam, she gave up pencil to they were done massage, gave up to do to the ship, and they rang the same than Duguris, and then any Sanji Ranga, any tongue around the subject is gone. That's socially gain the social Yabi Kananguris.
So Buddha, said things in the simplest ways and the basic truths. He said, Dikpachiya mijashi, never accumulate any non-virtuous actions, meaning negative actions. Kewa pisum sobache, accumulate the wealth of positive actions or, positive karma. Rang semne yongsudu, completely subdue your own mind, almost like do your own business, know what your business is all about. And this is the teaching of Buddha. So in all these implications, what he's saying is, each of us has the responsibility to work with our mind, tame our mind, subdue our mind. If we do that, we experience the essence of the teaching and we seek the freedom. Okay? Buddha didn't say that I will deliver you out of samsara, I'll do the job for you. He never said it.
다 녀몽 그 자와데 마리바텔다 매버서 퉁기다 매버서 토야다 녀보 응지 녀보지 유야다 매상방 그랬대.
So earlier I mentioned and emphasized a lot that we have this fundamental ignorance within ourselves, which is called grasping at self. Now that is the root culprit. If we can find a way to knock that one out of the system, then we will be free from delusions and free from suffering. Now the good news is that there is that perfect antidote, if you will, that can, counteract our grasping at self.
여자 매상도 딱 해버티 하고 그래서는 벤데르마스. 다음에 또 비켜르대. 다 당시 마르바테 다 뭐지 녀보들 너지 탑된지 여더랬어. 너지 탑된 레스다.
As powerful as our grasping at self is, that seems to be so powerful. But there is even more powerful antidote, that can tackle it, that can counteract it, which is, as I often say, it is to cultivate the wisdom realizing selflessness. Okay? The wisdom realizing selflessness is the antidote. Okay? Have I emphasized enough the article D here? Okay, the antidote to the grasping.
So that pen of chayagina. 아니 자리 top 첨부해서 아니 차리 그다 전 동마로 왔어.
Now it is like in the law of nature. If in a region where it's like extremely cold, then the heat cannot. If the heat does not have the same intensity as a cold, it cannot counteract it. Heat, extreme heat and extreme cold cannot coexist. That's not in the law of nature. Because they don't. Complement each other.
다음에 또 비켜렸다 당신이 뭐때 너저 차고 그랬어. 너저 때 들이 가서 이 마리바시 당신 마리바시 너저 때 대인보 다음에 또 비켜를 차고 그랬어.
So just as there are things in the nature which don't coexist, okay, in the same way, grasping at self, or that fundamental ignorance and the wisdom realizing selflessness, emptiness, do not coexist. If one is more powerful, other must go, say goodbye, and leave the spot. So therefore, when we cultivate the wisdom realizing selflessness very strongly, when it gains its intensity and power, then there is no way for the fundamental ignorance to exist. It must say goodbye. It must leave the space for that wisdom.
다 때가 나니 그 배나 맞아 그 밴드 세계나 산지 겸된데 배 산지 망보다 션 차여서 뭐다 나제 또 해줘 봤네 정도에 아니 산지 망보지 흔 배차여서 근데 정말로 내가 당보 나란서 뛰고 차려서 얘네 더 렘베 녀모 비쇼라 녀보 톱된 때네 녀모도 잡은 밖에 다 드니시네 렘베 양답이 히르데 란줄이 본패지 치네 안 산지가 뭐 터버렸을 말아서 기본 차그랬을
So we need to remind ourselves that, of course, in Buddhism we believe in many enlightened beings or Buddhas, right? Shakyamuni Buddha is just one of them. He's not only the Buddha, and of course he is our great teacher, no doubt. But when we look, at his life stories, if you will, there was a time when he was exactly like one of us, very deluded, in the same problematic situation that we find ourselves in today. Okay? So Buddha did not begin as a Buddha. That's a false premise. So Buddha was just like us, a very deluded person or a sentient being to begin with. But then, in course of time, what he did was, as all other Buddhas did, that they applied antidotes to their delusions, and as they progressed in their paths and practice, their antidotes become more powerful. The delusions become weak and weaker. That's how slowly they developed deeper levels of realizations, and that's how they were able to develop the wisdom gone beyond. The wisdom realizing emptiness as it is and enhance it to the infinite state of existence. And that's how finally they become a Buddha. So that's a great hope and news for us, right? At one point of time, they were just deluded like us, but they worked hard. They changed the course of their actions and direction. So when we try to do the same thing, then, we can see the bright, future for ourselves, spiritually speaking.
With the nations and pay some of the harm the Kodiar was. Savant, Sanjay, Savant, and other Yablis Mato, some Maji because the Sanjay because the Yande show us Yamarist. Savant, someone, Savant, the change the test, Savant, they are losing the Shiakta, you never your Takura was then as a Hago.
So often in Buddhism, perhaps the greatest news we can deliver to anybody, to ourselves included, is that all of us, as a matter of fact, all sentient beings have what we call Buddha nature, the seed of enlightenment in us. That's a great news, of course, but at the same time, it's not enough just to have the seed, okay, because we have this seed for a long time, okay. We need to activate that seed of enlightenment. So that's where we need to make efforts. We need to create favorable conditioning factors, because as this seed meets with the favorable conditioning factors, then we experience the germination of the seed of enlightenment inside us, and that's how we grow spiritually. Okay? And so when we say that we have Buddha nature, we must not misunderstand as if we are making this assumption or a claim that we are both sentient being and Buddha at the same time. We are not. Okay, we are not saying that, okay, everybody has seed of Buddha inside, so therefore we are Buddha, but also a sentient being. That makes no sense at all. Okay. What we are saying is, yes, the great news, we got the seed, now we got to do the work. So we need to activate the seed, we need to create the favorable conditions so that, we are able to experience the germination of the seed of enlightenment and become Buddha. I feel like talking a little bit about the praise Rinpoche, Manju Sri Lama Tsongkhapa offered to Shakyamuni Buddha for teaching the law of relativity or dependent arising, Pratit Samutpad. And it comes from a most excellent work called Lekshe Nyingbo, most eloquent explanation of the essence of most eloquent explanation. So it's praised in praise of relativity.
So that carries a church in Jesus Lopala, Gubatan in the church. Sanjay Kamdi, the church in Jesus Long King. That comes out to Samalo, Gubatan in the church. Mundipi donating parent during drawers. John the chin.
So in that praise, Lama Tsongkhapa says that those who, dedicate, their lives and follow your teaching and way of life, they are able to distance themselves from misery and suffering. They're able to go away from, if you will, to be free from all the misery and misfortunes.
The Karasana, that Junsi here. Junsi Kalasana, Nikils our dosha rose. And Cherag Jesus Longet and Gubatan Yunchuris, Karisana, Nebakus Zawa, Maripatel, and Doya the Taki the Churang Tena, Tamutanju.
So how come, that those who most sincerely follow Buddha and his teachings are able to free themselves from miseries and misfortunes? How come? Because you have taught the way to uproot the very root cause of the suffering. Okay, so that's it. So what is the way to deal with the very root cause of suffering? It is his teaching on the dependent arising or pratit samudpat, relativity.
Church ten is shishopin, you could our dos, Maria, church ten, you get our dos, church ten is shishopin, you ring our attention. Number two, you can churches, ten bears. Some of things you could turn there and they tell Dobbins, do anything. You get our dos, church ten is six shoppers. Sanjay come to the temple is six shoppers. Didn't only Palma give a six shoppers. During our age chance, pay no Kibuchini, and it don't never Zoya at the time, pay Kalikovic Jan this heaviness, during our age. She should show a paper hints. But surely part Doya the day, except the, and it's sure that Susu and so she let down so young be on the Calgaris.
So Lama Tsongkhapa praised most highly praised Shakyamuni Buddha for teaching dependent arising or relativity, because that is the antidote to uproot the root delusion, and that's how we can be free from suffering for good. And he said in the same praise that others who follow any other system or a way which does not teach dependent arising or the pratit samudpat, even if they exert great efforts and make great sacrifices for a long time, they will not be able to see the freedom from suffering. You know, it is oftentimes it's almost like they're inviting more problem to themselves.
Ring the machine by saying, Dangzi the senior down it. Oh, those cigarettes. Carrying marvelous.
So you said, how can you say that, other systems are almost like, even if you make a great exertion or efforts to practice, it's like inviting more problems? It's because in other system, because the relativity or the dependent arising is not, taught, it is as if the system itself nourishes our grasping at self. If any system nourishes our grasping at self, how much effort we make to be free from grasping, but we are stuck in. We are just kind of plastering the grasping and making it, it's like we have become a great friend of the grasping. So we make it our great, best friend. So if the grasping remains our best friend, how can we ever be free from other delusions and suffering?
No. Ane doesn't but any telling him what into Maris. Never much as to take some of the own restation. Looks
just to make clarification here, he said if you do not follow, Lama Tsongkhapa says, Buddha's teaching, your teaching, because he's basically directly communicating to Shakyamuni Buddha, for how wonderful that he taught us the dependent arising. If we don't, anybody who don't follow your system, that's what he said, not like follow anybody other system. He said, if anybody who doesn't follow your system, how can they find an antidote to grasping itself? Because such a teaching on dependent arising is not given in any other teachings.
She give Junse Karasana, Dangzi Maribate, Rangi, Dangzi Maribate, Ane Megazoku Garavas, Chetan.
So, in other words, such teaching is not available anywhere else. So, therefore, the Lama Tsongkhapa's conclusion is that we have to follow Buddha's teaching, if we are to find that antidote to uproot grasping at self. And why do we need to do that? Okay, why do each of us need to make efforts to cultivate the wisdom realizing selflessness? Because we want to be free from delusions and suffering. We want to get rid of grasping at self. So in order to be able to cultivate or experience the wisdom realizing selflessness, it's not enough to say some good prayers and make some, wish fulfilling prayers. We have to, make tremendous efforts. We have to, therefore, engage in study or listening to teaching, contemplation, and meditation. We need to adopt this threefold approach: teaching, contemplation, and meditation. So basically means we have to educate ourselves first, what this grasping is, what the wisdom is. Then we have to make efforts to cultivate it. So simply making some nice prayers is not going to be good enough.
Danti maripate meba zoa shebala takachegi tusum jene intellectuals da bena erdebada teba cham mato majene te ane tele ane tolo kwai nanda chag maris.
So one may get a good education on what this grasping at self is, what the selflessness is, but as you heard the Geshe use the word intellectual, if one get caught up with just the intellectualism part of it, and never really apply the teaching to one's mind, then one may understand it quite a bit, but it's really not going to help counteract the grasping at self and be, and free from suffering.
Tatela samgo sambe ane tambo twebe here the rangi shabashe the chue nyen so so she the dilatene ane twebe here rangi shengures.
So first we have to listen to teaching on selflessness, and that gives rise to the wisdom through hearing the teaching. That's what we said. Then next, we have to do the contemplation that gives rise to the wisdom arising on a higher level through contemplation. And then we need to meditate, so which gives rise to a still higher level of wisdom. So that's how those three types of wisdom arise consequentially. Like first there is the wisdom of arising through teaching, listening, then the contemplation, and then the meditation. So all that needs basically is study and practice.
Dame to be herete ranji chevi tap the gomne ta ranji chevu sonsa ta gombala ni hebala tegur den dosin remember dosin ta junde rembe on chin dosin was.
So we think in terms of cause and effect relationships. If we want to experience the wisdom realizing selflessness, we got to practice. In order to practice, we got to study what it is. In order to study, we have to make efforts, and then, so that's how one leads to the others. Listening to teaching should lead to contemplation, that should lead to meditation. So I intended that to be sort of a preface to my actual teaching, but that itself turned out to be the actual teaching. So.
And younger Lama Chonka with Jimbo Ganeta systems then do that. The day any Chu Karikev and any Shibus and Jalam Jumba Jumele and about the Ragvik Rogu Yaris.
According to the tradition or the system of Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa, who is known as Rinpoche also, that before we give any teaching, it doesn't matter, brief or long, the Lama must, present what we call a complete practices or the teachings of the three types of practitioners. There's the initial, there's the intermediate, there's the advanced level practice. At least in a very nutshell, and then move on with other teachings.
That's correction. And Tambo and Tangi Tanga Sushini, there Ninjung Samba Shea Tapchi, they never do call and Ninju with Tapchi, and they she be Chungu call and Ninju Tap Shegores.
So what really that means is, first all of us need to find ways or means to cultivate aversion to the misery in samsara. That means, we have to develop a sense of renunciation. We have to renounce samsara. We can't, get attached to and like and get excited about samsara. We got to develop aversion. And so we have to find ways to develop such aversion.
Saying that the Shavachama Nishnanza, Shavachame, and the Zod, Ane Karsota, when the Shavachama and Yasuk Dungi Yomoga, and the Sun Tang about the Nixon Congress.
So of these and future lives, we have to consider the future life more important, and at least we should try to make efforts to see that, in our next life, we don't have to be, reborn in a very miserable states of existence and suffer even greater and more. And so that's what we need to think about.
That telling Karensana, a ship you social rangtoni, rang any rawanki tak to Yama, so tell a ship you ship the any Sani Kojusumate. Sanji Chota in this Taban de Vanam ships it, those scanning.
So if we want to be free from bad states of rebirth in our next life, how can we do that? So of course we can't do everything just on our own or independent of anybody's help. So this is where we need to seek refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. We call the three jewels or three ratnas. And as it is stated elsewhere, and Geshe quoted the lines, it says, Buddha, Dharma and Sangha are the objects of refuge for those who seek freedom and liberation. So the way we kind of begin our contemplation, if you will, is first we consider that, okay, of this and the next life is more important. So I do not want to be reborn in a terrible state of existence. Okay, so who can save me? Okay, they are the three jewels, so I need to go for refuge in them. So this is what we call the practice of the initial level practitioner. Right? So that means next life, because I really worry too much about myself. I don't want to go into hell, And next life, so therefore I want to be free, and what's the way out? So there are the three jewels, and I seek their help. So that is a small practice, if you will. And then now we really expand our thinking. We said, okay, is that enough, good enough? In next life I'm free from the bad migration. Is that a good deal? Well, not really. We are still in samsara. Okay, so samsara is a headache anyway. So now I think I really want to be free from samsara. That's even a better deal. And so what do I need to do? So that's how we expand our way of thinking.
So that tell any lende the sound tang, the lende not get the have any become good to the textile share.
So if we want to be free from samsara for good, then of course we really need to deal with and contemplate a great deal and understand the infallible working of law of karma and its results. What do the karmas do? What do the bad karmas do? What do the good karmas do? Where do I come into the picture? Okay, do I need to make any changes with my karmas? Okay, so which means I need to stop creating the negative karmas. I need to purify myself of the negative karmas. I need to accumulate positive karmas, and all of that thing. So we really need to, contemplate these issues of the matters and apply those things to our life.
That in this any those in some time gum job shaving in run tabi combat in the Tenzin Dorjee. And then running him be singing to any pay run teaching but him by some time, and then she became alarmed here. And then Shanju's hair was running shave tab. So anything told is so to Yanish, I shall get to some Anglish.
So we said, it's a much better deal to be free from samsara than just to be, get a one good rebirth next time, And so I need to think about karma, I need to cultivate the wisdom, realizing selflessness, and that's how I can be free from samsara for good. Okay. Now we still say, is there even better deal than that? Or is that the best one? Well, there is a better deal than that, because when we think about our connection with all sentient beings, then we know that we are karmically connected with all other sentient beings, and as a matter of fact, they have been very kind to us. Okay? And so therefore, in a way, we cannot be too selfish and forget about the rest of the universe and as if I'm the only one who exists. Okay? And I matters. And so that's how we find a way to work for enlightenment to benefit all other sentient beings. And this is where we see the need to cultivate bodhicitta, altruistic mind of enlightenment, altruistic attitude. So what goes with that altruism is that some actions, right? Any thing devoid of actions or is not much of a worth here. So that's why we have to practice the 6 perfections, paramitas, from generosity to the wisdom with altruistic motivation, and that's what will help us to reach complete enlightened state. So that is the practice of the advanced level practitioners.
So then one time Gena Shevinandra, one Chimbukuni, one Chinda Kubinanda, Karishaviana, the Murdo de she was in Chalamjarumba, Yonzo Hindu Sinta, Judil Matevin, Yuzuki and Shagiris.
So referring back to the statement I made earlier that according to the system or the tradition of Lama Tsongkhapa, Rinpoche, when a Lama gives any kind of teaching or and is going to give tantric empowerment or initiation, the major ones or the minor ones or whatever the case may be, need to at least present in a nutshell the practices of the 3 practitioners, okay, so that people understand, the stages that they can go through.
No, when you don't need to pay report Jimmy, Ranju Shevi Top Shady Carson, Shanju Semta, then don't you to be hearing you put it up, Ranju Shia tongue about tongue with the Shangris.
So now again you ask me, okay, now just say what the bottom line is here, what we need to focus on completely and get absorbed and whatever, it's just almost like one thing that we need to do all the time. Then I'll say that we need to make all the best of our efforts to cultivate bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness. We have to bring them together, all the time. So that is the bottom line. So I thought maybe it's good to stop there, and we have a few more minutes, and if you have questions, take your opportunity to ask questions. If I'm not looking at you, just, don't think I'm ignoring you, just yell at me. I just need to hear your questions,
Don't yell. That take those. Ani Toba de Yogris, Sana Matana, Toba Yumaris. Toba Yudin.
Okay, maybe I'll say this, if you have a lot of doubts, doubts are not necessarily bad, that means, if people think a lot, then you have a lot of, doubts arise. And, no.
Nambe any church and Lucinita, Junsi the Dempaching about Google is. Junsi, you hear you mena, and the Yamaris. Karina Junsi Yantam, which hears yours.
In Buddhism, so much importance is given to what we call valid reasoning. We try to understand or justify everything based upon some valid reasoning. Of course, it might take time for us to understand and discover all the reasons, but understanding based on reasons is going to be very firm and solid. If there's no reason, then our understanding and belief is going to be shaky. It's not maybe going to be that much of a help. So even in the case of teachers, if they really don't know what all the reasons are, they should be honest and say, okay, I don't know what the reasons are. But they should not say, oh, there are no reasons, but that's how it is. They can't say that. The master must confess, I don't know the reasons, but that doesn't mean there aren't reasons there. Because when we do really analysis and the deeper analysis, we should be able to, if you like, authenticate whatever the experience or the reality, be able to check that with some reasons, it's rational. There should be good rational, to support the claims. So you didn't ask any questions, so I assume you don't have questions, and we stop there. You have a question, okay, Yeah. Yeah.
I think that bodhicitta is extremely difficult. For low level like us, it's been hard enough to deal with our own delusion and attachment. Now if we attempt to think that we can practice bodhicitta, most of us turn out to be hypocrites.
Okay.
instead of a real practitioner.
Okay.
So could Geshe give us a few words, simple, that we can understand? I know we talked a lot.
Sure.
Just flew right over our head. Like
Sure, very good.
a few words so we can stick onto it until we die.
You want me to repeat the whole thing?
Question for the Vietnamese, so you can translate.
Well, I don't know whether I can justify repeating like one paragraph questions, but I'll try to, synthesize it. If I make a mistake, just, again, anybody is free to correct me anytime. Basically, the question was asked about at our level, where we are very deluded and dealing with all our headaches, bodhicitta seems to be above our head, and then trying to cultivate it seems like more like we're a hypocrite. Is that really helpful? Of course, Geshe taught us many things about bodhicitta for a long time, but in a very simple way, just to make sense, how can we do that? Otherwise, it seems like hovering above our head. Bodhicitta is such a high-level practice, and we are in a very difficult situation.
Okay,
Yes. So Geshe understood everything.
Ta le labo jik de shebe na ani ta heman mang bo he charis. Pe na rangel semta luta nga ta yisum bote. Sengi yin ne ba chan ma shi ta.
Yes.
Ne ba she ta peta panguris.
Yes. Geshe said he understood what your questions, and maybe the most simple way to put it is that each of us should think that I'm not going to do, say, or think anything, basically actions of my body, speech, and mind that hurts others. Okay. Yes.
Tik. Ne ba chan ma she she.
Yes.
Pemba ka se na ta du tu de du res.
Okay.
Pemba du ma tu na ne ba she ta sam no chang tong cha ma.
So in our mind, basically, this is what we want to think about, that in some way I can benefit and help others, and I'll do that. But if I couldn't, okay, but at least I'm not going to harm anybody through my actions of body, speech, and mind.
Ta ti le ta ka le la ta something. Le la bu ji hen teres. Ta ngone se gi na. Deres. Se ye ta ji ka di chimo yimbe rang da yin ji ka di chimo yimbe tang go ga ba. Ti chira ka bu lu se ga ba.
Yes. And so I think that may be the simple way to think in our mind. You said, okay, if there's something I can help others benefit, I'll do that. If I couldn't, at least maybe we don't think too much about that part, but see whether I'm not going to do anything that hurts or harms others through my actions of body, speech, and mind. The way I think, what I say, and what I do physically. Of course, if we go into more detailed thing, then I understand where your question is coming up. Like if we say that we have to cultivate bodhicitta, which means we have to reflect on the kindnesses of all other sentient beings. Literally all others, meaning including our enemies. So that's where the challenge is, right? And so we have to think about how everybody has been kind to us.
Sem no tang bu na ka le kha bo re sam ni sam ji ya ma res. This sam ba yin na le la bo ji gi na ka le kha bo chan do res.
But another thing I want to mention is, it may seem so difficult or almost impossible, but we must not decide in our mind, well, that's really way above my head. I'm not going to go there. But even the simple things which can be easily practiced, if we have that state of mind or attitude, then we are never going to be able to do anything.
Ti she na kho bo chag ma res. Kho bo se dir ba ta kang cha la chan de de zar ba.
No.
Ko seng do.
Yeah, so we do not want to cripple ourselves right from the beginning. Like, oh my God, that's way above my head, and I'm never ever going to do that. We just kind of shut down our mind. We just at least consider the possibility. Okay, maybe I'm not right now, I can do it, but there is that possibility I could do it.
Tambo ko ne sem ko thol se ko ji chen a ta do yong sa ma ri san so ma go chat ang yin de ga ma res.
So right from the beginning, as we hear all this high-level teaching, somehow we undermine our own abilities and, oh my God, this is just way above my head, I'm nowhere near that, and this is nothing to do with me. We shut down our whole sort of mind-body system, then there is no hope at all. At least we keep the possibility open, and we are being honest. At this point of time, I'm not able to do it right now, but there is that possibility to grow.
That the leg Hiwala ke sem kubo chaya da tene ke le penya ke che to gom na hawa ma yibe ngo na ken ya ma iskana.
So as great Bodhisattva Mahasattva Shantideva, the great Indian Bodhisattva, said in his guide to Bodhisattva's way of life, Geshe was giving us a very inspiring message. He said, there is nothing in the world that does not get easier to be done through the power of familiarization. Okay, we just cultivate the familiarity to do things, but slowly, as the power of familiarization grows, things get easier to be done. That's in the law of nature. So once it becomes habit for us to do something and we get good at doing it, then everything seems to be easy to do. So I think the question you raised is very important. It has benefited a lot of people. I think. I think we should pick up every bit of a courage we could develop to face to practice any kind of spiritual practice or cultivation. When it comes to doing something negative, then we should not be brave at all. We should be really timid. But when it comes to doing practice, we have to pick up every bit of a courage, to say, okay, I can do it. So even a very high level advanced practice, okay, this is too big for me. That's true right now. But one day I can definitely do it. I will make effort, and I must do it one day. So we just kind of boost up our spirit. So I think that's a good point. No, your question has really, I think, many implications, and I kind of recognize them. Some people even do get scared, to hear about bodhicitta or emptiness. It really scares them in the first place, But there's no reason to kind of undermine ourselves and get disheartened.
Dan Sinje Tambili Iginobile Lapi, thank you, do somebody, Tadu Jebran Zimba Kosene. Sinje Tambili P. Jebra Zone at the Bay, on a run and a say Kambakan Yabaleta, Hatfish, Sinji Gila, and some Tongaris.
Now, when we look at the great holy beings and the great practitioners, how they cultivate so much power of familiarization with spiritual thinking and positive thinking, as great Geshe Langdang says in his 8 verses mind training, may I be able to see each and every sentient being as more precious than a wish-fulfilling gem. And may I cherish them day and night, So for them, cherishing every sentient being is the greatest thing they can ever do. It is like for us maybe finding a whole house filled with gold,
Socially, our Queen never says something, make that to me. Colleague, there's Susie, there's Tamuta Gemo to Maris. Nothing is gay.
Of course, there is no easy way out. It is like, let's give me a very simple example. It's like there's a person who somehow we don't get along well for whatever reason. Maybe
don't want to talk to them.
The other person doesn't want to talk to us, we don't want to talk, and we even don't want to see each other. So we don't have, look into each other's eyes. It's like we don't want. But maybe slowly we can try with the person not looking at us, kind of like, okay. Well, he's there, she's there, And next time maybe a little more pick of the courage, okay.
Just show the pairs. No smiling, no, they're fine. Then later. Then yes. They talk.
They shake hands and introduce, and then become a friend. So it all takes time and efforts, and everything is a gradual process here.
Yeah. Especially workplace, people, they do really it is not so good. Sorry. We really, this is very, very important. Really, we are to be great enlightenment place or become a freedom. Do we have freedom or not? Other sentient beings related with other sentient beings. Really is. Other sentient beings, everybody's yes, but he or he not. If you think that's not good. Without discrimination, everything. When we do practice, good for the others means including, enemies. So that's the way really it is. We should, yes, we should learn.
Yeah.
If you see someone and they tell you that they are a different religion,
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter. They from their side discriminate they did it doesn't matter. From our side should not.
Yeah, but is it good for us to say or wear something that says like Buddhism and make them feel uncomfortable, or is it better not to?
You don't need to say. So just like them, you know. Okay, so just don't need to say I'm Buddhism. Just, if they don't like it, if you know them, they don't like it, they don't need to say. But I am a religious person, you can say. What kind of a thing you say? Then you can say it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, should we wear anything, you know, that I know like the Jewish people and the Christians and so forth, they wear different things.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
And then should we, you know,
That's
make
it.
it bad for their minds, for us to wear?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. From their side, whatever comes, it doesn't matter. But from it's safe, everybody see equally, same way. Economic thought is very important.
So maybe it's better for us not to be too much.
No, don't need to say.
Yeah.
Don't need to say. Yeah, don't need to say. No, you don't need. From those are your understanding inside. So don't need to say I don't like this. No, no.
Yeah, Geshe says, it doesn't matter. People know we are Buddhist or practitioner. No, it doesn't matter at all. We don't need to, communicate that part.
Yeah.
Unless somebody asks us, they want to know more about, right?
Sometimes,
It's okay.
we, doesn't believe in the religion. So, okay, doesn't matter. We are just like a friend, just like their side. Just stay, but inside there's a big difference. So anyways, wishing for everyone to be good, everything's good, okay?
You gave such a wonderful, helpful answer to the first question. I have a similar question.
Yes.
What state of mind do you need to develop in order to appreciate your ripening karma that's bad, painful, miserable, ripening karma? You tend to resent it because you don't understand it. You don't think you created this because you don't remember in this life.
Yeah. This life is just good. I think.
Will you repeat it for the internet people? The question?
Yeah, what she's doing too.
I'll try. That's all I can say.
Okay, I can translate.
Okay, internet people, this is the question asked, wherever they are. Maybe there isn't anyone here on the internet. We are just in an illusion state, right? The question asked is, when our bad karma ripens, how can we appreciate that? Because we usually resent anything bad happening to us. And of course, we don't remember anything bad we did. And that karma must have been done a long time ago. So how to kind of approach that, deal with that?
That is it. That's usually Migi later, give it like Kandigina, Nami, you don't want more in Minjur.
Of course, first, as you just said, and I'm relating to that when we do good karmas, they bring good ripening results. They never bring bad ripening results. And the bad karmas bring bad ripening results. We have to kind of, keep that in mind.
The Taurus. Choa Devata Chodungi. Choa de Bena Gave Lage never me begin a Choa Deva Jinjuris. May give Lage and Nami Maricaseta, the Tinijin Devin join and it's Choa Dungi Junguris. Just that's how it was.
So that by ripening results, good and bad, we are talking about pleasurable and unpleasurable experiences and feelings, right? The good karmas give rise to pleasant experiences or pleasurable feelings, and the bad karmas give rise to unpleasant feelings.
So that in the Rantol Kandiji Shoma in that the legend Debbie but there's something.
So one thing is we just have to kind of put a recognition on that, whatever I'm experiencing, these are the feelings, these are the results of karmas I did.
So that less I Shevanding him at the Sayana, the Hamamashe, Sani, Lu, Jahamu Buchin, the Hakoya Maris.
Of course, we wouldn't know when did we do this karma, maybe just in the previous life, or many, many previous lifetimes. We have no clue in some sense, when did we do that karma.
So that thing is never something. Run so what they do Karashomin that late and Shoma de Hakovashani, that late Nami the Ram Mimbre. So in Santa, Gavaina. So what Devin Johnson and Shavashima Penchil and the Tabu Joyaka gave less saggy some shit. That so what Dungage and John Bayana, And the next one, the next and so don't you mogay. Do start something so far, never zone that purified over. Some things.
So I think in the case of the good ripening results, the pleasant feelings, then we draw inspiration from that. Okay, these are, the results of something good I did in the past. I don't know when in the past, but, So therefore, I would like to experience similar ones in the future, so I will make efforts to create more positive karmas. When we have a bad ripening result experiences, we said, okay, again, I don't know when did I do this bad karma, but it's here and I'm experiencing it. And I do not want to experience this kind of thing again and again. So therefore, I develop the courage and inspiration that I don't indulge in negative karmas, so that I don't have to go through this again. So in the case of a bad ripening results, another good news is that once you experience it, you don't have to experience it again. You see, so it serves the purpose, right? One bad karma is, cleared.
That the told Karesana, Rana Choa Dunga, Yoshana, the Naya, and the Sinti Tambuncha Mambole. Miza Maibi, Sunti Mambole, then the Nick Dunga Yungu, the Samalo and Indi Kochapi, some.
Now we can even expand our thinking. I'm not the only one who go through this kind of bad ripening result. There must be, tens and thousands of other human beings and other sentient beings going through this, So by my experience of this bad day, may all others don't have to go through this again. Or maybe their suffering, comes to an end soon, like that. So we can, think more positively, generate.
When the social to Kane or Martina, social anything is on Tangbina, social single told that shoot Chimbuchi, the shoot Chimbuchi sign.
Of course, by our thinking that way, by my experience of this suffering, may others be free. Of course, that's maybe not literally going to help others, because they have to pay for their karma. But by such positive thinking, our state of mind, that we are able to deal much better with our own, situation right now.
Okay, that's the guy.
So I think that's very good. We stop there and I have few prayer requests here for people who have health issues. Hamada has health issue and Darlene Bundy has health issues. So prayers have been requested for them. I have announcements to make. It's a re-announcement actually. Annie did that already, but. 4th of July, the happy day is here on Wednesday, so there is no Lamrim teaching on Wednesday. Okay. And July 6th, Friday, is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's birthday. And I think there is a simple long lives ceremony here with a light breakfast at 7 a.m. in the morning, Friday morning, if you're available. So you're welcome to that. Okay.
Normally we do the His Holiness Dalai Lama's birthday with the Tibetan people. This year, Tibetan people, they're going to game and something, playing. So we are not doing those things. So that's why we do in the center in the morning, rather than go to party outside, with the Tibetan people. We are doing here. If you have time, please to come. Then it's breakfast. Yeah, you can have breakfast. Then you can go to work. That's why reason for we are doing here. Then another, what is it?
The July 4th.
July 4th.
Teaching Yom.
July 4th. Then evening.
Teaching message.
Teaching. There are no teaching because I thought people ask me maybe that day everyone has a party or something, then you go to see the friends, families. So that's why I stopped that night, only that night, Wednesday. So that all this reason is like that, okay? That's all.
So as we said, everything is based on reason.
Yeah.
So
if you don't explain your why, then you have So that's one, okay? So anyways, now then we do the good wish for all those sickness people, and also some of the dead already, some of the dying, which we make announced here. This is only one truth, few. Even today, this time, so many people dying going to die. Almost death in red, or on the way already. So someone's beginning to say, really it is. We are not here only just little community here. We are not, but so much, in the world, different places, so many reborns, maybe new babies, so many is dying, leaving from this world. So those kind of happiness. So we do good wish for everybody. Okay? So do think about this. Shadong college jabo tong shendong go zombe sangye. Kana kandu tela te den ba zumba series shatse lo omane beme 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 omane omane beme omane beme omane beme omane beme omane beme omane omane beme omane beme omane beme omane beme omane omane beme omane beme omane beme omane beme omane beme omane omane beme voilà. Voilà. 나도 안에 다른 가서 년도 손도 신이 따라 교회 교진 시베게 저올라 때니 안에 산지 때문에 뭐지다 지금은 내가 봤다. 저 이기노베 저베 땡지 시베 도만 시고에 교회 때문에 두지 인도다 매매선도 용왔다. 내 교동기제 쇼 보면 이제 균이 샤와는 있었는 로바다. 이게 되지 감도다 현도 멘티비 소자다 현이 튼지는 소자다 매매선도 용왔다. 안에 너는 마게 생이 템비 리니 보다 튼 산지 고모로 토비 제주기.
Together this morning we have accumulated merit through my teaching and through your participation in the teaching, and we dedicate our merit for the flourishing of Dharma, the source of benefits and happiness throughout the universe. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other great holy beings from all traditions live long and be successful in fulfilling their visions benefiting sentient beings. May spiritual communities throughout the world and spiritual practitioners from all traditions remain healthy, harmonious, and be successful in fulfilling their spiritual aspirations. May these and other world systems be free of all kinds of unwanted pains and problems, and may beings find peace, happiness, prosperity, and spirituality. Last but not least, we dedicate our collective merit for all kind mother sentient beings to be free from the fears and dangers of two types of mental obscuration, and may we all reach complete enlightened state quickly.
Sanje yendo me de bo ye, ro Kuya Namdava Hinlo Shubara Sho Ekam Guru Namada Nayandaya Me.
Geshe has to go to another engagement, so I think today people should postpone their visit to him.
Good, Geshe.